Great Extinction Event. What killed the specialists? The 2004-5 NHL lockout didn't just pause hockey for a year, it fundamentally restructured the entire sport. When the league returned, it brought with it a hard salary cap that started at $39 million and has since risen to $88 million for the 2024-25 season. This wasn't just a financial adjustment, it was a great filter that immediately eliminated any tolerance for inefficiency. Every roster spot became a critical investment that demanded multi-dimensional contributions. A player who could only fight, or only score, or only block shots suddenly became a luxury teams could no longer afford. The cap forced teams to ask a brutal question about every player. What else can you do? But the salary cap alone didn't kill the specialists. It needed an accomplice, and it found one in advanced analytics. Metrics like Corsi and Fenwick became the NHL's lie detector, exposing players whose perceived production failed to match their actual impact on winning hockey. These numbers quantified something coaching intuition often missed: defensive liability. A high-skill offensive player who avoided backchecking might be defended as a genius, but Corsi proved mathematically that the cost of his poor positioning often exceeded the value of his sporadic brilliance. The third force was the strategic shift toward what's called the 200-foot game, a style that demands every player contribute across the entire ice surface, from defensive zone retrieval to offensive zone cycling. In this system, a player who takes a shift off isn't just lazy. They're a tactical liability eating up valuable cap space. These three forces converged to create a hostile environment for any player whose value came from a single specialized skill. The age of the specialist was over. The pure stay-at-home defenseman. The pure stay-at-home defenseman was hockey's immovable object. Players like Dan Girardi built careers on net front clearance, shot blocking, and physicality in their own zone. They rarely joined the rush, preferring to stay safely back, waiting to stop the inevitable counterattack. This archetype has been declared extinct in the modern NHL, and the reason is simple: speed and transition. The contemporary game demands high mobility from every player on the ice. A slow or offensively challenged defenseman severely handicaps the team's ability to execute clean breakouts, forcing reliance on flat defenseman-to-defenseman passes that are easily forechecked or intercepted. Modern coaching emphasizes that defense is no longer defined solely by hitting and blocking, but by effective transition play, initiating offensive plays by making clean breakout passes or skating the puck out of the zone. A player who cannot consistently manage this under pressure slows the entire system. Furthermore, modern defensive strategies require offensive contributions from the blue line. Tactics now involve D2 play, where the defenseman without the puck actively climbs the ice during neutral zone counters and joins the attack. A pure defensive specialist who remains static creates predictable breakouts and fails to generate the necessary numerical overloads in the offensive zone. The term stay-at-home defenseman has increasingly become a euphemism used by critics to excuse the poor offensive and possession numbers of mostly bad, slow defensemen. To survive today, a defensive player must possess sufficient skating ability and passing skill to be classified as a two-way player, even if their primary focus remains defense. The one-dimensional offensive defenseman. At the opposite end of the spectrum was the one-dimensional offensive defenseman, the blue line gambler. Players like Paul Coffey in the 1980s excelled at generating points through high-risk pinches, aggressive zone entries, and commanding the offensive blue line. They provided massive offensive upside but accepted colossal defensive liabilities. The strategic failure of this archetype lies in the severity of its failures. While these players successfully created positive events more often than negative ones, the negative events were devastatingly severe. A failed aggressive pinch high in the offensive zone, a turnover, or being caught out of position could instantly lead to dangerous scoring chances against, often resulting in an odd man rush or a goal. The modern game simply cannot tolerate a player who is a strategic liability in one zone, no matter how brilliant they are in the other. The analytical revolution and the necessity of the 200-foot game enforce a universal standard. Every defenseman must maintain good defensive positioning, protect the net, and execute clean breakouts. A player who fails at these foundational defensive tasks, even if they score 80 points, is a net strategic drain. The modern defensive mandate has fundamentally merged offensive initiation with defensive responsibility. The highest form of defense is often a clean transition, which minimizes time spent defending. The specialist died because defense is now about strategic acceleration and possession maintenance, not just containment. The dedicated enforcer. The dedicated enforcer defined a specific era of hockey. Their role was uncompromising and single-minded. Protect star teammates, provide an emotional lift, and deter physical aggression through the application of force. Players like Dave Schultz, who once amassed 472 penalty minutes in a single season, and Bob Probert, who engaged in 285 fights over his career, epitomized the strategic use of intimidation. This role reached its peak in 1987, when the average NHL game featured 1.3 fights. The extinction of the enforcer is unique because it was precipitated by both moral necessity and economic reality. First, there was the human cost. Studies examining the long-term health consequences of fighting in hockey found that enforcers, defined as those with 50 or more career fights, died on average a decade earlier than their less pugilistic peers. Furthermore, they were more susceptible to death by suicide and drug overdose, ailments often linked to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. a neurodegenerative disease caused by repeated head trauma. The heartbreaking story of Derek Boogaard, the 6'7" boogeyman who struggled with chronic pain and prescription drug dependency before his death at 28, exposed the profound failure of the league to protect its most vulnerable players. His brain, examined posthumously, showed severe CTE damage despite his young age. Second, the economic pressure of the salary cap made dedicating a roster spot to a player whose primary function was violence strategically impossible. Teams could no longer afford to carry an asset whose only skill was fighting, especially when fighting itself does not benefit the team in any official capacity and is technically prohibited by Rule 46 of the NHL rulebook. Since the lockout, fighting has declined dramatically to just 0.19 fights per game. The value proposition simply evaporated under the twin constraints of finance and safety. The spirit of physical confrontation survives today in tough forwards, like Ryan Reeves or the young Matt Rempa, who is training with legendary enforcers like Georges Larac. However, these modern players are primarily tough forwards. They must be able to skate, forecheck, and play regular functional shifts to justify their roster spot, distinguishing them fundamentally from the dedicated one-dimensional heavyweight, the pure sniper. The pure sniper was hockey's version of the lazy technician, a player with jaw-dropping offensive ability, lethal touch, and supernatural vision, who treated the defensive zone as an optional inconvenience. In the pre-analytics era, raw goal totals and highlight reel moments justified the existence of players like Alexander Salmon, whose skill level allowed him to dominate games despite constant criticism about his lack of heart or work ethic. Phil Kessel, too, was often described as a player who might struggle defensively, looking lost in his own zone, but whose immense goal-scoring prowess offset these liabilities. The cause of this archetype's extinction was the ruthless efficiency demanded by the 200-foot game and quantified by analytics. The modern system relies on relentless forechecking, back pressure, and quick neutral zone transitions. A player who glides or does not commit to the collective defensive effort when the puck is lost is a tactical anchor. Advanced metrics mathematically expose these high-skill players. Corsi and Fenwick revealed that while they created scoring chances, the team often bled chances against while they were on the ice, leading to poor possession metrics. The numbers demonstrated that even genius-level offensive ability could not consistently compensate for the constant structural fragility created by defensive non-participation over 60 minutes. The philosophical shift is clear. The NHL moved away from tolerating unsustainable, individualistic brilliance toward favoring system and collective effort. Today's successful scorers, such as Connor Bedard, must integrate their sniper touch with crucial playmaking, positional IQ, and commitment to the team's defensive structure. The classic grinder. The classic grinder or mucker was the defining character of the third and fourth lines for decades. This archetype was not about scoring stars, but about relentless effort, physicality, and corner battles. They were fan favorites for their willingness to endure physical abuse, grind along the boards, and execute the dirty work, digging out pucks to set up the offensive stars. The Detroit Red Wings grind line, featuring Kirk Maltby, Chris Draper, and Darren McCarty or Joe Kosher, became legendary, succeeding by using physicality and forechecking to wear down opponents' top scoring lines. These players weren't expected to score. They were expected to make life miserable for the other team's stars. The classic grinder died primarily due to economic necessity and skill inflation. After the salary cap was instituted, teams required that every player, especially those earning lower salaries on the fourth line, contribute tangibly to strategy. The pure grinder, whose value stemmed solely from disruption and hitting, became obsolete. The modern fourth line must possess skilled depth, capable of executing complex zone entries, maintaining possession, and contributing meaningful offense. A fourth-line center who can score 20 goals is now more valuable than one who can only hit and fight. These players must be reliable penalty killers and capable of keeping up with other teams' top lines to prevent high-quality scoring chances. While the modern forward still hits and battles, carrying the DNA of the grinder, they are expected to function as a complete secondary scoring threat, not just a chaos agent. The role evolved from the battle axe into the modern checking scoring forward, like Casey Cizikas, who combines relentless effort with tactical skill and offensive output. The pure stand-up goaltender. The extinction of traditional goaltending styles was arguably the most sudden and least influenced by coaching preference. It was a technological assassination that fundamentally altered the position's biomechanics. The pure stand-up goaltender, exemplified by players from the pre-1990s like Ed Jockman and Bill Ranford, relied on standing tall, utilizing positioning, reflexes, and athletic contortion to stop the puck. This style originated in the early NHL when rules actually penalized goalies for dropping to their knees. The stand-up goalie maximized upper body coverage and relied on reflexes, dropping down only as a last resort for rebounds. The death of the pure stand-up style was dictated entirely by equipment evolution. Beginning in the 1990s, equipment began to change drastically. Goalies moved from bland, sweat-soaking pads to lightweight, massive pads designed to maximize coverage. This technological shift coincided with the rise of the butterfly style, popularized and perfected by Patrick Waugh. The butterfly, which requires goalies to drop to their knees to cover the bottom of the net, proved tactically superior for covering the lower scoring areas against increasingly faster, harder shots. The critical factor is that modern pads, optimized for the horizontal butterfly position, physically made the stand-up style indefensible. The size and shape of contemporary leg pads mean that if a goalie stands straight up and attempts to make a save, they cannot bring their heels together to close the 5-hole, the crucial gap between the legs. Standing tall instantly creates a massive, exploitable hole that modern snipers will always target. The equipment designers effectively mandated the end of the stand-up style by creating gear that made the traditional vertical stance a fatal strategic flaw. It wasn't a choice. It was a biomechanical necessity. Today, all NHL goalies employ a hybrid style, blending the efficiency of the butterfly with the anticipation and tactical depth required when standing. Legends like Martin Brodeur, often mistakenly categorized as a pure stand-up goalie, actually employed a mixture of stand-up and butterfly. The modern elite goalies, such as Andrei Vasilevsky, are masters of the hybrid approach, having evolved far past the constraints of the purely stand-up era. The rise of the Swiss Army knife. The NHL's strategic evolution shows a clear pattern. The league did not kill core skills. It simply forced those skills to be compressed and internalized by every player on the roster. The age of the specialist is over, replaced by the era of the comprehensive, multidimensional contributor. The ultimate survivor and dominant species of the modern NHL is the Swiss Army knife, the player who possesses positional versatility and tactical intelligence across all 200 feet. This player is defined not by one specialized skill, but by the reliable ability to execute multiple complex tasks on any given shift. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a key example, described by teammates as Edmonton's Swiss Army knife. His value is based on his ability to anchor the top power play, serve as the first forward over the boards on the penalty kill, play both wing and center, and be deployed late in games for shutdown duty. This kind of flexibility is explicitly valued by coaching staffs because it provides essential tactical freedom and roster elasticity under the relentless pressures of the salary cap. When specialization is financially punitive, versatility becomes the most treasured commodity. The specialist's core DNA survives within these polymaths. The defensive tenacity of the grinder lives in the forechecking pressure of the skilled third liner. The offensive vision of the blue line gambler is now channeled through the defensively responsible, mobile defenseman like Cale Makar, who can rush the puck, quarterback a power play, and still shut down opponents' top lines. The pure sniper's lethal finishing ability is now expected to come packaged with strong two-way play, as seen in players like Connor Bedard. The transformation of the NHL is a case study in efficiency conquering character. The modern game is demonstrably faster, more skilled, and intensely more analytical. The data reveals that the specialization of the past was inefficient, often resulting in systemic vulnerabilities that could be exploited by modern coaching and quantitative analysis. By engineering out the specialized liability, the NHL has built a collective system where every piece serves multiple, sophisticated purposes. Teams can no longer afford passengers. Every player must contribute to offense, defense, and transition. The result is a game that is ruthlessly optimized for winning. However, the cost of this optimization is the loss of color, eccentricity, and the simple, uncompromising dedication of the specialist. The league sacrificed the dramatic simplicity of the pure poacher, the brute necessity of the enforcer, and the beautifully tragic arrogance of the lazy technician. There was something undeniably compelling about watching a player who did one thing and one thing only, and did it better than anyone else in the world. The enforcer who couldn't skate but would fight anyone. The sniper who wouldn't backcheck but could score from impossible angles. The stay-at-home defenseman who would block every shot with his body, even if he couldn't make a breakout pass to save his life. These players were flawed, inefficient, and often liabilities, but they were also unforgettable characters in hockey's story. Their singular focus made them legends, even if it also made them obsolete. While hockey has gained tactical complexity and collective excellence, the debate remains. In trading individualistic genius and specialized character for homogenized efficiency, has the sport lost a piece of its soul? The numbers say the modern game is better. The heart says something was lost that can never be recovered. The NHL has evolved from a league of specialists into a league of Swiss Army knives. It's faster, smarter, and more efficient than ever before. But on those rare nights when an old enforcer drops the gloves or a pure sniper ignores his defensive assignment to score a highlight reel goal, we're reminded of what once was and what we'll never see again.